Spring Creek, Nevada is the kind of place where distance stretches in every direction. Long roads, wide land, few neighbors. On Sunday, March 8, 2020, a teenage girl did what she had done many times before. She left home for the afternoon with someone her family trusted. She told her father she would be back later, possibly even before him. But as the evening wore on, something felt off. Calls went unanswered. Messages stayed unread. That was not normal. By nightfall, concern turned into fear. By the next morning, the question was no longer when she would come home. It was where she had gone. As word spread through Elko County, neighbors began searching open land and desert roads. Law enforcement followed a lead involving a stranger and a pickup truck. For days, that story shaped everything. But the truth, when it surfaced, was far closer than anyone expected. And once investigators understood where to look, the case changed completely. Welcome back to Dark Case Storytime. We bring you new true crime documentaries every single week, so make sure you are subscribed and all notifications are turned on. And now let's get straight into today's video. Spring Creek sits in Elko County in the northeastern corner of Nevada. It is rural, open, defined by ranchland, mining work, and rodeo culture. For families who live there, independence is learned early. So is trust. Brittany Ujlaki lived in Spring Creek with her father, Jim Ujlaki. After her parents divorced, Brittany chose to stay with him. Brittany was the oldest of his children. He spoke openly about how becoming her father changed his life, how it grounded him, how it gave him direction. Jim worked as a gold miner. The hours were long, the work was demanding, but by every account, his relationship with his daughter was close, exceptionally close. Friends described their home as a place where people came and went freely. Brittany's friends spent time there often. Some of them had known her since middle school. Jim trusted those friendships. He had no reason not to. Those who knew Brittany describe her as confident and self-possessed. She stood straight. She spoke directly. Horses were a constant in her life. She spent hours riding, helping with livestock, being outdoors. Friends said being a cowgirl was not just an activity for her. It was a mindset. At the same time, Brittany enjoyed makeup and social media. She liked experimenting with different looks. Friends often asked her to help them get ready for big events. She moved comfortably between those worlds. Most importantly, Brittany was consistent. She checked in. She answered her phone. She kept her father updated on where she was. That consistency would later become one of the clearest warning signs that something was wrong. In school, things were not always easy. Her parents later said she dealt with bullying. Eventually, she switched to homeschooling. Despite that, she stayed connected to her friends. She spent time with them regularly, often getting rides from people she had known for years. One of those people was Bryce Dickey. They had met through the local rodeo scene. He was older than her and described by many as quiet and shy. To Brittany's family, he was familiar, trusted. Sunday began like many others. Brittany accompanied her father to his band practice that afternoon. It was something she had done before. She liked to give feedback, sometimes bluntly. After a while, she grew bored. The musicians were older. The rehearsal dragged on. Brittany made plans to leave early. She contacted Bryce Dickey. He agreed to pick her up. This was not unusual. He had driven her places many times before. Her father had no concerns. Before she left, Brittany told Jim she would be home later, possibly even before him. She got into Dickie's truck in the afternoon. The two spent several hours driving around the area, talking, passing time. At some point, Brittany asked to be dropped off. According to Dickie, she wanted to meet someone new. He later told investigators that he left her near Spring Creek High School. He said he watched her walk toward another vehicle. At the time, that explanation raised no immediate alarm. Jin stayed at practice, then went to dinner with the band. He assumed Brittany was already on her way home. By early evening, that assumption began to feel wrong. As Jim drove home that night, he tried calling Brittany. It went to voicemail. He called again and again. That was not normal. Brittany always answered or called back quickly. By the third unanswered call, Jim felt panic set in. When he arrived home, Brittany was not there. Her phone was off. There were no messages. He began calling people she might be with. Friends, family members. He contacted Brittany's mother. She had not seen her either. Her younger brother reached out to Bryce Dickey. He asked when Bryce had last seen her. Bryce repeated the same account. He said he dropped Brittany off earlier that afternoon. As the hours passed, concern spread quickly through the family. This was not a missed curfew. This was a disappearance. Later that night, Jim contacted authorities. A missing person report was initiated. By the following morning, deputies were working off the only concrete lead they had, a location near the high school, and a story involving a stranger. At that point, no one yet understood how misleading that story would be.
So, kind of run me through it so I can understand what's going on.
All right, so Sunday, around 11,
okay.
I started texting, got a few texts from Brittany, just asked if I wanted to hang out. Said sure, got ready and stuff. Told me she could meet me at Angel Park because she said her dad was doing band practice. And then went to town, called her when I got into town on 5th, and then picked her up at Angel Park, drove around, went up towards Mountain View, asked what she wanted to do, said she had no idea, said, why don't we just go drive around to Spring Creek since we got more room over there. So we went back over the hill, just started chatting, talked about her finishing school, how school was going for me, kept driving around, and then we were over in the Horse Palace section, and my dad called me asking if I could come back home. So I told her I needed to go. Asked her if she wanted me to just drop her back off at Angel Park, and she said that she wanted me to drop her off at the high school to meet her new friend, and said her dad was going to pick her up later. So then came over here, pulled in right over there, gave her a hug and stuff, and then she got out. I pulled out and then started heading that way.
From the beginning, one detail stood out. Bryce Dickey told investigators that Brittany had chosen to meet someone else, someone new. He described a man he said he did not know, tall, wearing a cowboy hat. According to Bryce, the man was driving an older green pickup truck, a Ford F-150. He said Brittany walked toward the truck, got inside, and drove away. That account shaped the entire early investigation. Deputies began searching records for matching vehicles. They asked the public for tips. They tracked down similar trucks across the region. In a place like Elko County, green pickups were common. Cowboy hats were common. The description was broad, too broad. Still, it was the only lead available. Friends repeated the story. Family members repeated it. Searchers kept the image in mind as they scanned roads and desert pullouts. On social media, people asked the same questions. Who was the man? Why had no one seen him before? As days passed, the lack of confirmation became noticeable. No one could identify the truck. No one came forward as JT. No records matched the description. Quietly, investigators began to suspect that the story itself might be the problem. While investigators chased leads, the search on the ground expanded. Brittany's family did not wait. Friends joined in immediately. They drove back roads, checked pull-offs, walked open stretches of land. The terrain made everything harder. Miles of desert, sparse landmarks, little cell service. Jim drove his truck through remote areas, scanning the land, looking for anything out of place. He later said he felt something shift inside him during those searches. A sense that the outcome would not be what he hoped for. Still, no one stopped looking. Deputies coordinated efforts. Volunteers continued showing up. 3 days passed. Then, during one of those searches, someone noticed something unnatural in the desert. A blue tarp. Authorities were called to the location. At that point, the search for Brittany ended, and the investigation entered a new phase. Her time on this earth was ended.
Yeah. Uh-oh. See that? Yep. That's not good. Oh, that's a 1092. That's a body. Yeah. Let's get out. Yep. I can see enough right now. Looks like a girl's hand. Let's back out. Yeah, that's a... Yeah. I will. I'm going to get their vehicles out. We'll get the crime scene secured and call stake. Let's go out the same way. Yep. We'll process the whole thing. All right. Hey, Nick. We got a female body. We have a female body. I don't know if it's her or what, but we have a female body out behind Burner Basin. Got drag marks and a bunch of things. So we had 2 guys that found them. We're getting their statements. I'll get a picture of their footprints that are going in and out, and I'll get a picture of their tread marks. Basically, she face down, pants down. She's got black heels on, like boots on. Let's grab. We'll get tire print from them, and then also take their shoe prints because they went in there. Okay. For exclusion. Exclusion purposes, yeah. Sounds good to me. Sorry, you guys got to go through this. This is what I do.
The worst part is I know her dad.
From that moment forward, every detail mattered. The location was a remote area outside of Spring Creek, away from homes, away from traffic. When deputies arrived, they confirmed what the family feared. Brittany had been found. Her time on this earth came to a close there in the desert. Investigators secured the scene immediately. What had been a missing person case was now something very different. The area was documented carefully. The surrounding ground was examined. Nothing was moved without record. Word reached the sheriff's office, then the family. Brittany's mother was there when investigators received confirmation. She later said she could not stand. Her body simply stopped responding. For Jim, the news brought a painful clarity. The uncertainty was over, but the loss was permanent. Deputies began working backward. They needed to understand how Brittany ended up there, and who had last been with her. The answers, they believed, would come from evidence, and the desert had not been as silent as it first appeared. At the scene, investigators documented multiple items. Some appeared ordinary at first. Others immediately raised questions. Everything was collected, bagged, logged. Forensic testing followed. As results came back, patterns started to form. Investigators also reviewed digital records, phone data, location information, surveillance footage from nearby roads. Those records told a story that did not align with the earlier account.
Did she say anything about anyone that she was having problems with, or any people that she was interested in, or anything like that?
We all knew she was talking to some guy that we think was in New York, but she'd been talking to him for a while.
Okay.
Besides that, and then, like I told everyone else, a lot of people had problems with Brittany, but nothing that we would see with this outcome.
Sure. Well, hopefully, yeah. Okay. And now's not the time to hold back words, man.
Yeah.
Did she have a bad reputation or something like that?
With a lot, because she used to get in a lot of fights, and a lot of people didn't like. Brittany was a very straightforward person.
Okay.
And a lot of people didn't like that because she was very blunt and honest.
Okay.
So a lot of people disliked her.
They just didn't like how forward she was, and she really didn't hold back, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Is
right.
it primarily females or male and female?
Male and female. We went through, kind of did like the full circle, went through over by the sports complex in Spring Creek. And then I had to go back home to my dad's house, so I asked her if she wanted me to drop her off back at Angel Park or where her dad was having practice. And then she was on her phone for about 30 seconds-ish, and then asked me if she'd drop her off at the high school to meet her new friend.
Did she give any indication, of who she may have been talking to or anything like that?
No, she just described a new friend, but also, same thing, Brittany was always finding new friends. I mean, she had a new best friend probably about every month or so.
Okay.
Video showed a truck matching Bryce Dickey's vehicle traveling past the high school. It did not stop. Location data placed Brittany and Bryce together longer than he had initially stated. Investigators compared timestamps, statements, movements. The gaps became impossible to ignore. When Bryce was asked again to explain his timeline, details shifted. Small changes at first, then larger ones. Eventually, investigators requested a DNA sample. Bryce agreed. When results were returned, they directly connected him to the scene. At that point, the investigation narrowed quickly. The unknown cowboy, the green truck, the stranger named JT, none of it could be verified. What could be verified was far more troubling. The focus turned fully to the last confirmed person to see Brittany alive. With the evidence pointing in one direction, investigators brought Bryce Dickey in again. By this point, the story about the unknown cowboy had fully collapsed. No vehicle, no witness, no records. Surveillance footage showed Bryce's truck traveling away from where he said he dropped Brittany off. Digital location data placed them together far longer than he had admitted. When confronted with those facts, Bryce changed his account. He acknowledged that he and Brittany had gone into a remote area. He admitted that there had been intimate contact. Investigators did not accept the explanation as given. The forensic evidence told a different story, one that did not support consent. Brittany had been disgustingly violated, and her life was ended afterward. What investigators could not determine was a clear motive, only that Bryce had been someone Brittany trusted, someone her family trusted. In the days after her disappearance, Bryce had stayed close to the family. He joined searches, attended vigils, posted public messages of grief. That behavior later took on a very different meaning. Once the evidence was laid out in full, detectives believed they had no other viable suspect. An arrest followed. Bryce Dickey was taken into custody and formally charged. The case moved slowly through the court system. Delays were common. Proceedings were technical. At trial, prosecutors focused on physical evidence, digital records, timeline inconsistencies. They did not rely on speculation. The defense argued there were no eyewitnesses, that the case was circumstantial. The jury heard the evidence, reviewed the records, listened to testimony. After deliberation, they returned a guilty verdict. Bryce Dickey was convicted. He received a life sentence with the possibility of parole decades in the future. For Brittany's family, the outcome did not bring relief. They had lost a daughter, a sister, a presence that could not be replaced. The legal process had ended, but the consequences would last forever. Here is what is clear. Brittany Ujlaki did not leave voluntarily. She did not disappear into the desert on her own. She was betrayed by someone she trusted, someone already inside her circle. What remains unclear are the moments no one else saw, the decisions made in isolation, the exact point where everything changed. For her family, those questions remain unanswered. What does remain is Brittany's memory, a young woman rooted in open land and open skies, whose life was ended far too soon. And in Spring Creek, Nevada, March 8, 2020 is a date that will never fade. In the early hours of a weekday morning in Melbourne's southeast, a call came through to emergency services. The voice on the line belonged to a child. She was trying to explain what was happening inside her home, speaking quickly, struggling to stay calm, and asking for help to come as soon as possible. Adults were present in the house, but it was the child who made the call. Responders were dispatched to a quiet suburban street in Endeavor Hills, a place where neighbors were beginning their day as usual. Inside the home, something had already gone terribly wrong. When police and paramedics arrived, they were faced with a scene that would later be described in court as one of the most serious examples of family violence the state had seen. For one family, life had already been divided into before and after. What led to that moment, and what happened inside that house? Monique Lezac was a mother of two. She had twins, a boy and a girl. At the time of the events in this case, they were 10 years old. Monique was closely involved in their daily lives. Friends described her as organized, dedicated, and deeply focused on her children's well-being. She lived with her parents in Endeavor Hills in Melbourne's southeast. The household included multiple generations. It was a busy home, but one built around family support. Monique worked across several fields during her adult life. She trained and competed in bodybuilding. She also worked as a disability carer. Those who knew her said she was disciplined and routine-oriented. She set goals and worked methodically toward them. Outside of work and parenting, Monique had ambitions for the future. She had spoken to friends about plans to change direction professionally. She was also known to be private about relationship difficulties. When things were going well, she did not draw attention to them. When things became strained, she tended to manage them quietly. In the months before her life came to a close, those close to her noticed changes. She appeared more cautious, more guarded. She confided in a small number of friends rather than a wide circle. Her primary focus remained her children, ensuring they were safe, ensuring their routines were maintained, ensuring stability. People who knew Monique consistently described her as calm, measured, not someone who sought conflict. She was not known for dramatic behavior or sudden decisions. When she made choices, they were usually deliberate. That included decisions about her personal relationships. In the days leading up to what happened, Monique had begun taking steps toward separation, steps she believed were necessary, steps she believed would allow her and her children to move forward. What followed would end her time on this earth. Sven Lindemann was in his early 50s at the time of the events. He was originally from Germany. He later settled in Australia. Lindemann worked in the fitness industry. He was heavily involved in bodybuilding. That interest became a central part of his identity. It also became the way he met Monique. Friends and professionals later described Lindemann as disciplined on the surface. He trained regularly. He paid close attention to his appearance. He spoke often about structure, control, and personal standards. Behind that presentation, court material would later describe a different pattern. Psychological assessments found Lindemann held rigid views about relationships. He believed partners should meet extremely high expectations. When those expectations were not met, he struggled to regulate his responses. He had previously been married. He left that marriage to pursue his relationship with Monique. At the time, this decision was framed as a fresh start. There was no public record of criminal violence in his past. To many people outside the relationship, Lindemann appeared functional, employed, social, motivated. However, people close to Monique would later describe a pattern of possessiveness, a need to know where she was, who she spoke to, how she spent her time. These behaviors were not always visible to others. They often took place privately, through messages, through comments, through expectations that were presented as concern. In the period leading up to the separation, Lindemann's behavior became more intense. He struggled with the idea of losing the relationship. He expressed a strong sense of grievance. He framed himself as wronged. This mindset would become central to how he later explained his actions. As the relationship progressed, Monique began to adjust her behavior. Friends noticed she became more careful with what she shared, more selective about who she spoke to. This shift did not happen all at once. It developed gradually. Lindemann monitored aspects of Monique's life: what she wore, where she went, who interacted with her, particularly men. These actions were often framed as concern or commitment. Over time, they narrowed her independence. Monique reportedly felt she had to manage his reactions. She avoided conflict where possible. She chose her words carefully. Friends later described her as walking on eggshells. Monique told people close to her that she wanted the relationship to end. She said she felt nervous returning home. She feared he might do something stupid. These statements were not made publicly, they were shared quietly, with people she trusted. Lindemann, meanwhile, learned that Monique had developed feelings for someone else. This discovery intensified his sense of grievance. He interpreted it as humiliation, as betrayal. Court material later showed that he externalized blame. Rather than accepting the relationship had ended, he focused on perceived provocation. Experts later identified this pattern as coercive control, a form of behavior that does not always involve physical force, but which can escalate rapidly, particularly around separation. In this case, separation was brief. The escalation window was short. What happened next unfolded within days. The morning of May 30th, 2023 began quietly. Monique was inside the family home in Endeavor Hills. Other members of the household were present. The routine of the day had not yet fully started. By this point, the relationship between Monique and Sven Lindemann had effectively ended. She had communicated that she wanted to separate. She had also shared concerns with friends about how he might react. Those concerns would later become part of the court record. In the early part of the morning, an argument took place inside the house. What followed unfolded quickly. According to court findings, Lindemann's behavior escalated in a short period of time. Raised voices were heard. Movement through the house was later established. Neighbors would later confirm hearing sounds of distress. Inside the home, Monique's time on this earth was ended. The court later described the event as determined rather than impulsive. This conclusion was based on Lindemann's actions before and after. After Monique's life came to a close, Lindemann did not immediately seek help. Instead, he moved through the house. He accessed his phone. He transferred a large sum of money between bank accounts. The court found this act required deliberate steps. It showed awareness. It showed planning. Emergency services were not contacted by him. That call came from somewhere else inside the house. By the time police and paramedics arrived, the situation had already passed its most critical point. Monique could not be helped. Her life had ended inside the home she shared with her family. Lindemann was later located inside the house with injuries of his own. He was taken to hospital under police guard. Evidence collection began immediately. What remained was to understand how a separation had escalated so quickly, and what had happened in the moments before help arrived. During the events inside the house, one of Monique's children acted. She moved toward her mother. She attempted to intervene. Court findings later acknowledged her actions as persistent and determined. At a critical moment, she used a phone to contact emergency services. The call was made while the situation was still unfolding. Recordings later played in court captured her trying to explain what was happening. She provided the address. She asked for help. She stayed on the line. Police later confirmed that this call was vital. It ensured responders were dispatched without delay. The child remained with her mother until help arrived. She followed instructions given by the operator. She continued to speak clearly despite the circumstances. In court, a judge later addressed her actions directly. She described them as brave. She stated that there was nothing more the child could have done. This acknowledgement was placed on the public record.
The judge praising the bravery of Ms. Lazak's daughter.
Hopefully, as she grows up, Lily will come to understand that there was nothing more she could have done to save her mother, who would have been so very proud of Lily's courage and determination.
The child sustained injuries while attempting to intervene. These were addressed medically. Her actions were later referenced during sentencing as a significant factor. Following the incident, the children were placed in the care of family. Support services were engaged. Long-term assistance was recommended. The court recognized that while Monique's life had ended, the impact of that morning would continue, particularly for those who had tried to stop it. The investigation began immediately after emergency services secured the home. The scene was examined. Digital records were preserved. Phone data became central to the investigation. Investigators reviewed call logs, messages, and banking activity. Particular attention was given to Lindemann's actions after Monique's life came to a close. The bank transfer made inside the house was documented. The timing was confirmed. The steps required to complete it were outlined in court. Psychological assessments were later ordered. These assessments focused on belief systems, emotional regulation, and responsibility. Experts found Lindemann continued to externalize blame. He described himself as provoked. He framed Monique's decision to end the relationship as the cause. Recorded calls made while he was in custody were also examined. In these calls, he repeated similar explanations. He spoke about betrayal. He spoke about loss. He did not accept full responsibility. Witness statements were gathered from friends and family. Several people confirmed Monique had expressed fear in the days before. These statements helped establish context. They showed the separation was not sudden. They also showed Monique had concerns about safety. There was no dispute about what had occurred. Lindemann entered a guilty plea. This removed the need for a trial. The focus shifted to sentencing. Lindemann was sentenced in the Supreme Court of Victoria. The judge described the offense as an extreme example of family violence. The presence of children in the home was considered an aggravating factor. So was the prolonged nature of the event. The court rejected claims of genuine remorse. It found Lindemann continued to blame Monique for his actions. However, the court did acknowledge his early guilty plea. That plea reduced the length of the sentence he would otherwise have faced. Lindemann was sentenced to 31 years in prison. A non-parole period of 25 years was imposed. This meant he would not be eligible for release until he was in his late 70s.
He can hide his face, but Sven Lindemann can't escape justice. The bodybuilder jailed for 31 years for the murder of girlfriend Monique Lazak at her Endeavour Hills home in May last year.
You stabbed her 17 times in the face, neck, chest, back, abdomen, wrist and hands.
The 52-year-old used 6 knives in a frenzied 3-minute attack, while Ms. Lazak's 10-year-old daughter begged him to stop.
Lily did not give up trying to defend her mother. She managed to kick you and wrestle the knife off you, discarding it onto the floor.
Lindemann had flown into a jealous rage after the mother of 2 tried to end their relationship.
This was not a momentary loss of self-control. You were clearly determined to kill Ms. Lazak.
In sentencing remarks, the judge addressed Monique's children directly. She acknowledged the bravery shown during the incident. She stated clearly that responsibility rested with Lindemann alone. The court also recognized the long-term impact on the family. Support services were recommended for the children. The sentencing marked the formal conclusion of the legal process. But it did not mark an end to the consequences.
Jacqueline Schwartz has always struggled to find the right words to describe her grief. And just when she thought this painful ordeal was over...
Without sounding too dramatic, it's ruined our lives.
The man who murdered her treasured friend, Monique Lezak, is making a bid for freedom.
First I laughed. I cannot even understand how a human being can be wired like this.
Sven Lindemann was jailed for 31 years for the brutal frenzied attack as her 10-year-old daughter tried desperately to stop him. But he ended up blaming his victim, claiming she drove him to kill her because she was trying to leave the relationship. During sentencing, Justice Hollingworth called out Lindemann for his problematic attitude towards women and his sense of entitlement. Now he believes he deserves less time in jail. He's formally lodged his appeal, which will be heard as early as next year.
Because he is so narcissistic, it wouldn't surprise me that these are just actions to keep him in the spotlight.
With time already served, he'll be eligible for parole in 2048 at the age of 76. Now it's up to 3 appeal judges to decide if he should be released sooner than that.
We know that you're not remorseful. We know that you have no regrets. And that's fine. We'll see how it plays out for you.
Amber Johnston, 9 News.
For those left behind, life continued without Monique. In March 2017, a woman vanished from a terraced house on Grattan Street in Youghal, County Cork. Her name was Tina Satchwell. Days passed before concern was formally raised. Her husband told police she had chosen to leave. He said she needed space. He said she had taken cash with her. In the months that followed, there were no confirmed sightings, no verified travel, no use of her phone, no financial activity in her name. Searches were carried out. Appeals were made. Years passed with no clear answers. The house where Tina had lived remained occupied. Life on the surface appeared to continue. Then, in October 2023, investigators returned to that same address. This time, the search was different. It was more invasive, more focused. What they uncovered inside the home would bring Tina's disappearance to an end and raise a quiet but unsettling question. How had the truth remained hidden for more than 6 years? Tina Satchwell was born Tina Dingovan. She was raised in County Cork. Much of her early life centered around close family relationships. As a child, Tina believed her grandmother was her mother. Later in life, she learned the truth about her family structure. This discovery became part of her personal history, but not something she spoke about publicly. Those who knew Tina described her as sociable and expressive. She was known to enjoy dressing well. She frequently bought and sold clothing at local car boot sales. Animals played a central role in her daily life. Her dogs were constant companions. Family members later said she rarely went anywhere without them. Tina married Richard Satchwell in the early 1990s. They spent many years living between England and Ireland. Eventually, they settled back in County Cork. In 2016, the couple moved to Youghal. They took up residence on Grattan Street. To neighbors and acquaintances, Tina appeared settled. There were no known plans for her to leave suddenly. No confirmed preparations for travel. When Tina's time on this earth came to a close, the people who loved her were left with years of unanswered questions. Questions that would only begin to resolve long after she was reported missing. On 24 March 2017, Richard Satchwell went to a police station in Fermoy. He reported that his wife was missing. He told officers that Tina had left their home in Youghal several days earlier. According to his account, there had been tension in their relationship. He said she needed space. He stated that he was not overly concerned for her safety. Richard told police that Tina had taken 2 suitcases. He also claimed she had taken $26,000 in cash. He said the money came from savings kept inside the house. In the days and weeks that followed, this account was repeated. It was given to police. It was given to journalists. It was given during radio and television interviews. Richard said Tina had been upset. He suggested she may have gone to England. He told people she might return once she had cleared her head. He described the situation as a personal decision on her part.
28 years we've been together, 25 years married, and it's just completely odd. It's just completely thrown me because it's so totally out of character for her. Well, she got up in the morning, I did my usual thing, cup of tea, slice of toast, and she asked me if I'd drop over to Dungarvan, which is only like 20 minutes drive away. And when I returned, something like 2 hours later, she just wasn't there. I found her keys on the ground as I went through the front door. So I just said she's gone out for a walk. And when she didn't come back, naturally you get a bit sickly feeling, I suppose. We'd had conversations of late, so I said, right, she's gone down to a member family in Fermoy. So I give her a couple of days. I had to go down to visit my doctor on the Friday. And then when I found out nobody had seen her, it was like everything just fell away. You know, it's just totally odd that there's been nobody say, oh, I've seen her, you know, especially with living here on the main road. My original thoughts is she got up to have a break, to get her head straight, because she's been very upset in recent months. She's had a few crises within the family over the last few years. You know, I think it took its toll, and that's why I think she got up and walked out. I still believe she's going to just turn up the same way she disappeared. I was asked questions. I've not been cautioned or anything like that, but it got back to me through a member family that they're asking what I thought was unfair questions about, did the family think I could harm my wife? Well, I made a complaint about it, I had a good old moan about it, because I wouldn't lift a finger to hurt my wife. You know, you kind of understand that they've got this routine that they go through. Like when they searched the house, I was up country, I didn't know they were going to search it. I got the phone call telling me that they was going to search it, but I've actually given the Gardaí a key so they can enter the house whenever they want. You see, I've told nothing but the truth. I've got nothing to hide, so I've got no problem with them entering the house when they want.
And if there was anything you could say to Tina, what would you say?
I've been saying the same a lot recently. Just get in touch with somebody, whether it's by letter, ring the Gardaí, anything.
As time passed, the details of this version of events remained largely unchanged. The same timeline, the same missing money, the same explanation for why she had gone. To the public, the story appeared straightforward. A woman had chosen to leave. A husband was waiting for her to come back. Behind the scenes, however, investigators continued to quietly assess whether this account matched what could be verified. After Tina was reported missing, police began standard inquiries. They checked hospitals. They checked transport hubs. They made contact with family members. There was no confirmation that Tina had traveled, no evidence she had left Ireland. Her phone showed no activity. Her bank accounts remained untouched. Her identification documents were still inside the house. In June 2017, police carried out a technical examination of the Grattan Street property. The house was described as cluttered and unkempt. Officers noted ongoing home improvement work. They observed areas that appeared newer than others. At the time, nothing of immediate evidential value was recovered. Searches were expanded beyond the house. The police water unit examined areas of Youghal Harbour. Woodland locations were searched following public tips. Each search ended without answers. As weeks turned into months, investigators began to reassess the situation. Tina had not contacted anyone. No one had seen her. No trace of the alleged cash had surfaced. The case slowly shifted in tone. What had initially been treated as a voluntary absence began to raise deeper concern. Still, without physical evidence, the investigation could not move further. The public story remained unchanged. And for several more years, the truth about what happened inside the house on Grattan Street stayed concealed. As months passed, Richard Satchwell began speaking more frequently in public. He gave interviews to radio stations. He appeared on television programs. He made repeated appeals for information. In each appearance, the same core points were emphasized. Tina had left by choice. She needed time away. She had taken cash with her. He spoke calmly. He appeared certain. Over time, small additions entered the narrative. Suggestions that Tina had been unhappy, claims that she may have gone to England, statements that she was upset about personal matters. None of these claims could be independently verified. Police continued to log each interview. They compared public statements to formal interviews. What stood out was not what was said once. It was how often the same story was repeated. When questioned directly, Richard maintained that Tina would return. He rejected suggestions that something more serious had occurred. At the same time, family members expressed concern. They said Tina would not have left without contact. They said she would not have abandoned her animals. Publicly, the case remained framed as a disappearance. Privately, police continued to document inconsistencies. Still, without physical proof, the investigation remained limited. The story being told was stable, but stability did not equal certainty.
You know your partner. You know what you be talking about, and you know what you feel your partner would want you to do in circumstances. And that's all I did. I went by what I thought my wife would want me to do. Whether people agree with the way I did it, that's really up to them. They weren't living it, I was. I know my wife better than anybody. I probably know better than what I know myself. And I did what I genuinely felt was right.
Richard is also critical of how he's being portrayed by some elements of the media.
I think that actually at this point beginning to mislead and to some degree even fabricate stories. At this point, I'm not going to make any more interviews with anybody.
The couple first met while Tina was on a visit to the UK.
I've been with my wife 28 years. In them 28 years, I've never ever lifted a finger to her. I was brought up in a home where there was no... Yeah, there was arguments between my mother and father, obviously, but there was never any violence. And that's what I always intended to, and always will for the rest of my life intend for my wife. A good, quiet, loving marriage, and nothing else.
There have been no sightings of Tina. Her bank account and phone records have shown no activity since she vanished.
If I was asked to take a lie detector test, I would take one. My house was searched without my knowledge. And the Gardaí didn't find anything to suggest anything untoward. I live on a main street, so my coming and going's a scene. So, you know, I don't know why people are being so malicious.
Are you an innocent man?
I am. I'm innocent. I'm innocent of any wrongdoing.
Richard Satchwell has vowed to never give up hope of finding his wife alive.
Alongside interviews, investigators focused on verifiable records. They examined travel data. There was no evidence that Tina had passed through any airport or port. Her mobile phone showed no activity after her disappearance. There were no calls, no messages, no location movement. Her bank accounts were reviewed. They remained untouched. The $26,000 said to be missing became a point of focus. A financial analysis was carried out. It concluded that the couple did not have the capacity to accumulate that amount in cash. This finding directly contradicted the explanation given. Investigators also reviewed Richard's movements during the relevant period. CCTV footage placed him locally. At times he said he was elsewhere. Mobile device data supported those findings. Each individual discrepancy was small. Taken together, they formed a pattern. A woman who was said to have left had left no trail, no money, no communication, no confirmed destination. Despite this, years continued to pass. The house on Grattan Street in Youghal remained central to the case. It was the last place Tina was known to be. And increasingly, it was where investigators believed answers might still be hidden. By 2021, investigators had begun to look again at the Grattan Street house itself. It was the one constant in the case, the last confirmed location linked to Tina. Photographs taken in 2017 were compared with newer images. Small but notable differences emerged. Areas beneath the stairs appeared altered. Materials looked newer than surrounding structures. Certain finishes did not match the rest of the property. These details had been seen before. But now, viewed alongside years of unanswered questions, they carried more weight. Investigators also considered behavior after Tina disappeared. The house remained occupied. Major areas were altered. Nothing inside was ever flagged as urgent at the time. There was no single discovery that changed the case. Instead, it was accumulation. Years without contact. No evidence of travel. Financial claims that did not hold up. Statements that no longer aligned with verified records. By late 2022, senior investigators reached a quiet conclusion. Tina was no longer considered a missing person. Her time on this earth was believed to have come to a close. The focus shifted from where she might be to where she had last lived, and attention narrowed further toward the structure of the house itself. A dedicated review team was assigned to re-examine the case. They worked through statements given years apart. They compared timelines. They analyzed digital records line by line. The aim was simple: to determine whether the original narrative could still stand. It could not. By mid-2023, investigators believed a more intrusive search was necessary. This was no longer a surface examination. Walls, floors, and concealed spaces would be examined. Specialist expertise was brought in. Search methods were refined. The focus was precise rather than broad. The area beneath the stairs stood out repeatedly. Structural changes, unusual materials, inconsistencies with earlier descriptions of the home. In early October 2023, plans were finalized. The house would be searched again. This time, investigators were not looking for signs of absence. They were looking for confirmation. Confirmation of what had happened inside the house in March 2017. And confirmation of why Tina had never been seen again. In October 2023, police returned to the house on Grattan Street. This time, the search was intrusive. It was slow. It was methodical. Specialist teams worked through the property from top to bottom. Floors were examined. Walls were assessed. Concealed spaces were prioritized. Attention repeatedly returned to the area beneath the stairs. A detection dog indicated interest there. Investigators removed flooring. They examined concrete that appeared different in color and age to the surrounding material. The decision was made to dig. Beneath the surface, investigators uncovered a concealed space. Within that space, human remains were located. They were later formally identified as belonging to Tina Satchwell. Her time on this earth had come to a close years earlier. The discovery brought an immediate end to the missing person investigation. It also confirmed what family members had feared since 2017. Tina had never left the house. She had remained there the entire time. The home that had been at the center of public appeals and media interviews had also been the place where the truth was concealed.
Within minutes of arresting a man on suspicion of murdering Tina Satchwell in Youghal on Tuesday evening, Gardaí erected steel fencing around her home on Grattan Street in the town and covered it with tarpaulin to screen the house from public view. Heavy machinery, 2 mini diggers, one equipped with a pneumatic drill, was moved onto the site the following morning. The first breakthrough, and it is significant, came last night when members of the Garda Technical Bureau found skeletal remains. They have not been identified, but Gardaí are satisfied they are human remains.
The remains have been removed to Cork University Hospital, where they will be subject to further examination, including DNA analysis. The family of Tina Satchwell continue to be updated on the progress of this investigation. A family liaison officer has been appointed, and at this time my thoughts and the thoughts of the investigation team are firmly and continue to be with them at this difficult time.
The Assistant State Pathologist Dr. Margot Bolster and Forensic Anthropologist Dr. Laureen Buckley arrived at the search site at 11 o'clock this morning and spent several hours here. A priest also visited the site. After they left, a hearse arrived just after 3 o'clock this afternoon. The hearse left again within 10 minutes.
Within hours, the focus of the case changed completely. What had been framed for years as a disappearance was now understood as something far more deliberate. And the narrative that had been repeated since 2017 could no longer stand. Following the discovery, Richard Satchwell was arrested again. This time his account changed. He no longer said Tina had left voluntarily. He now claimed there had been a confrontation inside the house. He described an argument. He described fear. He described an outcome he said he never intended. According to this revised explanation, Tina's life came to a close during that encounter. Investigators challenged this account. They compared it to earlier statements. They compared it to digital records. They compared it to physical findings inside the house. The new version did not explain years of deception. It did not explain the false missing person report. It did not explain repeated public appeals. It also did not explain how Tina's remains had been concealed beneath the stairs and covered in a way designed to prevent discovery. Prosecutors would later argue that these actions spoke clearly to intent, that what happened afterward mattered just as much as what was claimed to have happened in the moment. The case was formally advanced, charges were brought, and for the first time since March 2017, the question was no longer where Tina was. It was how her time on this earth had been ended, and why the truth had been withheld for so long. The trial of Richard Satchwell took place in 2025. It lasted almost 5 weeks. The court heard evidence from dozens of witnesses. Jurors were presented with years of statements. They heard recordings of interviews. They examined financial records, phone data, and CCTV footage. They were also shown evidence relating to the concealment beneath the stairs. The defense argued that there was no intention to end Tina's life. They maintained that what happened was not planned. The prosecution focused on actions taken afterward. The false missing person report, the repeated public statements, the years during which Tina's remains were deliberately hidden. The jury was instructed to assess the evidence carefully and clinically. After deliberating for just under 10 hours, they returned a unanimous verdict. Richard Satchwell was found guilty. The court later imposed the mandatory sentence of life imprisonment. Members of Tina's family were present. They described years of uncertainty, years of false hope. For them, the verdict did not undo what had happened, but it marked an end to waiting for answers that should never have taken years to uncover. Before sentencing, the court heard statements from Tina's family. They spoke about who she was. They spoke about how she had been portrayed. They spoke about the impact of not knowing what had happened for so long. They described years spent believing she might still return. The judge acknowledged the prolonged nature of their loss. He imposed a life sentence, as required by law.
We want to sincerely thank the jury for their dedication. We would like to thank all the witnesses who helped us reach this verdict today. I would like to personally thank Sarah Howard, Tina's niece, who came up to give evidence and her support 2 weeks postpartum from her beautiful baby girl. You did yourself and Tina proud. Thank you to Anne-Marie Toomey and Dave Kelleher for putting the pieces together and finding Tina. We would like to thank John O'Connell, the victim support workers, for keeping our spirits high, and lastly to Clara Quirk. Forever be grateful for you. You went above and beyond for our family, from a shoulder to cry on, to a friend to laugh with. You were the person to call, and for that you will always be considered our friend.
During this trial, Tina was portrayed in a way that is not true to who she was. Tina was our precious sister, cousin, auntie and daughter. Her presence in our life meant so much to us all. We as a family can never put into words the impact of her loss that has had on all of us. Tina was a kind, loving, gentle soul who loved her animals like they loved her, and that's the way we want her remembered. Today as a family, we finally have justice for Tina. In this time, our family would like to ask for privacy to begin our healing. Thank you.
An appeal has been indicated. As of now, the conviction stands. What remains clear is this: Tina did not leave by choice. She did not take money and disappear. She did not abandon the people and animals she loved. Her time on this earth came to a close inside the home where she lived. What also remains clear is how long a single narrative can delay truth, how repetition can replace verification, and how absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. For more than 6 years, the answers were not far away. They were beneath the stairs, and when they were finally uncovered, they brought resolution, not relief, but resolution. In early February 2025, a quiet home in Galveston County, Texas, became the focus of growing concern. A woman who lived there had stopped responding to messages and calls. Days passed without any contact. A neighbor noticed the silence and reported it. A request was made for a welfare check. When deputies arrived at the residence on 15th Street in the community of Backcliff, nothing outside appeared unusual. The home was closed. The lights were off. There were no immediate signs of activity, but once deputies made entry, it became clear that something inside was not right. The welfare check took place during the first week of February 2025. Deputies with the Galveston County Sheriff's Office were asked to check on 61-year-old Tammy King. A neighbor reported that no one had heard from her for several days. This was considered unusual. Tammy was known to be responsive. She maintained regular contact with people in her life. When deputies arrived, they attempted to make contact from outside the home. There was no response. Entry was made shortly afterward. Inside, deputies located Tammy in her bedroom. Her time on this earth was ended. The home did not appear undisturbed. Personal items were scattered. Property that would normally be secured was missing. Based on the condition of the residence, investigators immediately suspected that this was not a natural passing. Major crimes investigators were called to the scene. The area was secured. An evidence collection process began. As detectives worked through the home, they also began asking a key question: who was the last person to see or speak with Tammy King? That question would soon narrow the investigation in an unexpected direction. Tammy King was 61 years old at the time her life came to a close. She lived in the community of Backcliff, Texas, in a modest home on 15th Street. Those who knew her described her as independent and routine-oriented. She handled her own finances. She maintained her home. She stayed in regular contact with people close to her. Tammy was also the primary caregiver for her granddaughter, Tara King. Tara lived in the home with her. At the time, Tara was a high school student. Tammy was responsible for overseeing her daily schedule. That included school attendance and household rules. Tammy was also in a romantic relationship. Her boyfriend was familiar with her routines and patterns. He would later become one of the first people to raise concern when he could not reach her. From the outside, the household appeared stable. There was no known history of police involvement at the address, no recent emergency calls, no public signs of crisis. But investigators would later learn that tension inside the home had been building, and that those tensions centered on control, boundaries, and expectations, especially where school attendance and relationships were concerned. In the days leading up to the welfare check, Tammy King was last heard from midweek. She had spoken with people close to her. Nothing in those conversations suggested she planned to leave or go away. According to investigators, an argument had recently taken place inside the home. The disagreement involved Tammy and her granddaughter, Tara. The issue was school attendance. Tammy expected Tara to go to school. Tara did not want to. There was also reported tension surrounding Tara's relationship with her boyfriend, Uriah Urick. Tammy did not allow him to stay overnight in the home. This boundary caused ongoing friction. The final confirmed contact with Tammy occurred the day before her life was ended. After that, calls went unanswered. Messages were not returned. No one heard from her again. At the same time, activity began occurring that Tammy would not have normally allowed. financial transactions appeared. Property inside the home was disturbed. But at that point, no one outside the house was yet aware of those changes. To neighbors and friends, it simply appeared that Tammy had gone silent. And as that silence stretched on, concern continued to grow. As investigators worked through the home, they began documenting items that appeared out of place. Drawers were open. Personal belongings were not where they would normally be kept. Property that Tammy King typically secured was missing. This suggested that activity had taken place inside the home after her life came to a close. Attention then turned to Tammy's financial accounts. Detectives reviewed recent transactions. What they found immediately stood out. Multiple digital transfers had been made from Tammy's account to another individual. These transactions occurred around the time contact with Tammy stopped. Several transfers were successful. Others were attempted but did not go through. The recipient of those funds was Tammy's granddaughter. This was not consistent with Tammy's usual financial behavior. Investigators also learned that Tammy's phone, purse, and other personal items could not be located. Combined with the condition of the home, the situation now pointed toward intentional activity rather than an unexplained absence. As these findings came together, detectives began building a timeline. They needed to know who had access to the home, who had motive, and who had been present during the final days. That focus would soon narrow. Investigators identified two people who could no longer be located. Tammy King's granddaughter, Tara King, and Tara's boyfriend, Uriah Urick, were not where authorities expected them to be. Family members had not heard from them. Friends reported receiving unusual messages. Some said they had been asked for rides. Others said money had been offered in exchange for help. At this stage, Tara and Uriah were classified as persons of interest. Investigators attempted to locate them through known addresses and contacts. Those efforts were unsuccessful. At the same time, detectives continued reviewing digital evidence. They traced account activity. They examined communication records. They spoke with individuals who had interacted with the pair after Tammy's life was ended. What emerged was a pattern of movement, temporary stays, and repeated attempts to leave the area. Based on this information, authorities issued alerts and expanded the search. What had begun as a local investigation in Backcliff was now moving beyond Galveston County, and the focus of the case had fully shifted from what happened inside the home to where two teenagers had gone afterward. As the search expanded, investigators relied heavily on digital records. Financial data provided one of the clearest timelines. Transfers from Tammy King's accounts were traced to Tara King. These transactions occurred shortly after Tammy's life was ended. Some transfers were successful. Others were attempted in much larger amounts but failed. Detectives also reviewed communication records. Messages sent from Tara's social media accounts raised concern. Several people reported being contacted with requests for help. Destinations outside Texas were mentioned. At the same time, witnesses reported in-person interactions. Friends and acquaintances described Tara and Uriah arriving unexpectedly. They stayed briefly, then moved on. In more than one location, the pair altered their appearance. Hair was cut. Hair was dyed. Investigators later recovered evidence consistent with these changes at a temporary residence. Bank records from Uriah Urick also showed incoming transfers from Tara. This supported the theory that the two were acting together. As detectives mapped these movements, a clear pattern formed. The pair were not hiding in one place. They were attempting to move quickly, and they appeared focused on leaving the region entirely. With each new lead, authorities narrowed the possible direction of travel. In the days following the welfare check, Tara King and Uriah Urick continued moving between short-term locations. When those efforts failed, they shifted direction. Eventually, investigators learned that the two had traveled several hundred miles south. Their movements brought them to Laredo, near the United States-Mexico border. How they arrived there was pieced together through witness statements and records. At least one individual later admitted to assisting them during this period. By this point, the case had drawn the involvement of multiple agencies. Information was shared. Leads were coordinated. The focus was now on locating the pair before they could move again. The flight that followed Tammy King's life coming to a close was nearing its end. But the legal consequences were only beginning. On February 9, 2025, the search came to an end. Law enforcement located Tara King and Uriah Urick in Laredo, Texas. The arrests were carried out with the assistance of multiple agencies, including the Galveston County Sheriff's Office and a federal task force. Both teenagers were taken into custody without incident. At the time of their arrest, investigators confirmed that they had been on the move for several days. They had not returned to Galveston County since leaving. Their sudden disappearance following Tammy King's life coming to a close now appeared intentional.
2 teenagers have been charged with capital murder, and they've been denied bond this morning in the Galveston County Courthouse. 17-year-old Tara King and her 18-year-old boyfriend Uriah Urick are accused of killing King's grandmother in her Bay Cliff home last Wednesday. Court records say that Tara was upset because her grandmother would not let Urick spend the night. Then the couple allegedly shot the grandmother, stole money and guns from her home. Police say the grandmother had no clothes on and had been shot in the head. The couple was caught in Laredo over the weekend. Right now, both are sitting in the Galveston County Jail.
And we're learning disturbing new allegations about this alleged crime. 17-year-old Tara King and her 18-year-old boyfriend Uriah Urick are accused of killing King's grandmother, Tammy King, in her Bay Cliff home last Wednesday. And according to court records, those who know the teens telling investigators Tara was upset with her grandmother because she wouldn't let Tara's boyfriend spend the night. The couple is then accused of shooting the grandmother in the head, stealing money from her bank account via Cash App, and stealing several guns from the home. Tips led investigators to their location in Laredo yesterday. Both teens are being held without bond.
As the pair were transported back to Galveston County, detectives continued gathering information. They interviewed individuals who had interacted with them while they were on the run. One of those individuals would later be identified as Travis Hodge. Investigators determined that Hodge had assisted the pair during their flight. He was later arrested and charged in connection with helping them evade law enforcement. With all primary suspects now in custody, the investigation entered its next phase. The focus shifted from locating the individuals to determining criminal responsibility. Both Tara King and Uriah Urick were charged with capital murder under Texas law. The charge reflected investigators' belief that Tammy King's life was ended in connection with theft. Uriah Urick's case proceeded to trial first. In November 2025, a jury found him guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Tara King's case followed a different path. Rather than going to trial, she entered a guilty plea. In early 2026, she was formally sentenced. She also received an automatic life sentence without the possibility of parole. Travis Hodge faced separate charges related to his role after the fact. Those charges included hindering apprehension and additional offenses. With sentencing complete, the legal process concluded for the primary defendants. The investigation that began with a welfare check had ended with permanent outcomes for all involved. Tammy King's life came to a close inside her home in Backcliff in early February 2025. What began as concern over unanswered calls became a case that unfolded across hundreds of miles. The investigation revealed planning, movement, and attempts to escape responsibility. In the end, those actions led to permanent legal consequences, and with a reminder of how quickly a private household conflict can escalate into irreversible loss.